Welcome to the Selling to Corporate podcast, where we're going to be challenging your sales beliefs around selling to corporate organizations and help you increase your bottom line profits every single month. I am Jessica Lorimer, your sales expert and guide in this world of selling to corporate companies, skyrocketing your company sales and making the impact that you really want in the world. Now, don't forget, if you do enjoy the show today, please do head over to iTunes and leave us a review. But enjoy this episode, and I am really looking forward to sharing some epic sales wisdom with you. Hello. And by the time that you're listening to this, I will have just come back from France, where we are celebrating a belated birthday trip of mine, actually, which is really cool. Owen is taking me to Rennes, which I definitely have pronounced incorrectly. So if you are in France or speak fluent French and listen to the podcast and I've pronounced it incorrectly, please feel free to email me and let me know how it is pronounced. Because that is how I'll be pronouncing it when I'm there. But we are going to Rennes and we are visiting the Champagne House. So we're going to Taittinger, which I know that you should pronounce Taittinger, just for anybody, again, who does speak fluent French, to not offend anybody's ears. But also, I don't feel like I'm cool enough to pronounce it that way. I speak a surprising amount of French for somebody who has not spent a lot of time in France. But I always worry about my accent because I'm like, I don't want to get it wrong and I don't want to be offensive when I start saying the names of champagnes. So if you are listening and you have any top tips on French accents, please do. Feel free, email in, tell me about them. Tell me what I can do differently. But more importantly than you telling me how to speak French properly, I have an episode for you today all about planning. Now, I will say I am actually recording this. I'm away with corporate clients at the moment. So I'm recording this in a hotel room, which is interesting. I don't know how the sound is going to be. So I apologize if it sounds different to my normal luxurious magnolia environment. But I wanted to obviously make sure that we had the right podcast episodes. And you know what you got to do? Sometimes you got to be on the road and getting the recording done. So today's episode is all about planning. Now, I, at this point in time, have held my first annual planning retreat of 2024. So for those of you who don't know, one of the things that I do only for C-suite participants is to run B2B sales planning retreats every single year. And I run them for a really limited amount of people. We take 10 at each planning retreat so that I can get my beady little eyes, on their plans and on everything that they create in terms of sales assets at those retreats. And I've had a lot of questions this year from people who are not in the C-suite and have heard about these planning retreats from last year and saying, Jess, could you open them up? And it breaks my heart to say no, but there are some really key reasons that I don't open them up to the public. And I'm going to talk about that today. And it's not because I want you all to buy the C-suite and then buy planning retreats. Although the salesperson in me is like, that ultimate upsell, Jess, come on. But there is actually a more customer focused reason that I don't do that. So I'm going to talk about a few of those things today. But most importantly, I'm going to be talking about what you should be doing with regards to your planning, because I'm seeing a lot of people get stuck this time of year. They will create these really pretty sales plans for the following year that they have the absolute best intentions of following. But honestly, a lot of them are very overwhelming. They're very overwhelming plans that end up not working, that they end up not being able to be accountable to, and they end up not actually implementing. So they don't fulfill their purpose. They don't get the result that the person wants. And I want this episode to support those of you who are either in end of year planning stage and thinking, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to plan for? And also just to make sure that for those of you who are super organized keen beans and have already done your end of year planning, you have a little think about whether you have created a plan with the right purpose or that's designed to fulfill its purpose. All right. Now, if you do want more details on end of year planning, I have podcast episodes coming out the wazoo. So feel free to revisit some November and December episodes from previous years. As ever, my episodes stay relevant and current. So if you are listening to something from 2022 and I have not updated it, that's because it doesn't need to be updated. And the stuff around planning is gold. So feel free to go back to those episodes in November and December of previous years, and you can find out a little bit more about different ways that you can start to plan and also different things that you can account for in your plan. But for today, let's talk about why plans aren't working and what you can do differently. It will probably not surprise you to learn that I have 3 key points. So let's dive in. So here's the thing about planning. Now, I think that the online education space has done everybody dirty. And honestly, when do I not think that the online education space has done everybody dirty? What is new? But the reality is that the online education space has really done people dirty because it's talked about planning like it's something that is generic and doesn't need to be customized to you, to your personality, to your capacity, your time, and ultimately your strengths. And so what tends to happen is that people will attend a really well-meaning planning event where people will talk about, what's going on in the year and what do we want to sell and when are we going to sell it? And the reality is that a lot of those plans end up going wrong because people don't have a certain level of understanding about their plan, right? And also specifically their sales activities. It's kind of like knowing that there's something wrong with your car and not being a mechanic. So just pulling out a load of random wires and plugs and hoping for the best. And that's what happens when people plan without any kind of like foundational understanding of A, what a sales plan is designed to do, and B, what they want specifically their sales plan to do. Now, what I mean by that is that when we look at sales planning, we are, yes, planning for the year ahead and looking at, what is it that we want to achieve? What do we want to see happening? But we also have to look at, where did last year's plan go awry? Are we actually troubleshooting our sales process? And the answer for most people is no, because most people have not come from a big sales nerd background. And so perhaps they don't know how to troubleshoot their sales process effectively. And perhaps they, are focused last year on just getting more leads because they wanted to book more sales calls, but haven't thought about why the leads that they got last year didn't turn into sales calls, right? And so therein lies the problem. Now we understand the mechanic analogy, right? Obviously, I had to say things like wires and plugs because I have no idea what is under the bonnet of my car. Is that embarrassing? I feel like it is. But when we look at the purpose of our sales plan, it is to give us a clear guide for the year ahead that keeps us on track to our purpose, whether that is more long-term sales, more short-term sales, whether it's about increasing the sales of particular products or services, whether it's about planning for particular times of year, if you've been in feast or famine previously. Your sales plan is there to help you overcome those problems. And so actually, if you're just creating a sales plan with little to no foundational understanding of how a B2B sales process works and little to no understanding of being able to troubleshoot your existing sales process, it can be really hard to create a plan that actually works. And that's why I only hold planning retreats for people who have been in the C-suite already, because it builds on knowledge that they already have about A, their business through things that they've tried, tested, experimented with, and B, the foundational understanding of B2B sales. And it builds on those skills. It builds on things that they already know. And it enables them to put a plan in place that is genuinely strategic, that they are then able to be accountable to and implement, because they then have all of the resources and templates inside the C-suite to make it much easier to execute, and also to meet the purpose that they want it to. So, for example, some people will attend my planning retreats and they'll say, Jess, I want to make a certain amount of revenue, but I only want to work a certain amount of hours per week. And because we can build on the foundational understanding that they have, or in some cases, experienced understanding that they have of their business, of where it is at, of the things that they have experimented with, the time, the capacity, etc., that they're going to have, and know that they will have all the resources to support them. It's very simple to sit over the 2 days that we spend together and create that completely custom plan that works for them, for their industry, for the goals that they want to hit. So when I was talking earlier about, I don't just open these up to the public, that's why. Because I can help you create a really pretty plan and I could sell that to a whole bunch of people. But would it be massively irresponsible of me because I don't have the context on your business, because I don't have any idea about your foundational understanding of sales, because I don't know what you've been able to create in terms of assets that have worked or not worked, because you don't know necessarily how to troubleshoot your sales process? Yeah, it would be absolutely irresponsible of me. Completely. And we have to recognize that as ethical salespeople. We can't sell stuff that we know isn't going to provide the transformation to the client. You wouldn't do it in the corporate space, or at least I hope if you listen to this podcast, you wouldn't do that in the corporate space. And I refuse to do it in the online education space. So when we think about why our plans aren't working, and maybe if you think about your plan for 2024 and however that has gone, if it hasn't panned out in the way you expected, this could be, yes, to do with your plan, but also to do with the level of understanding that you had when you were creating your plan and as you go into next year as well. Now, the second thing that I notice every single year when I hold these planning retreats is that our plans have to be based on metrics, but a lot of people do not know what metrics they personally are working to. So one of the things that we do at the planning retreats that I run is we work on people's personalized metrics. What is it that they have been able to achieve? And we can create and customize their plan around that. For people who are newer, we work on industry standardized metrics. So the metrics and data that I collate over working with thousands of people each year, and the data that I have about sales in particular. So things like conversion rates or average conversion rates from calls to proposals, and things like the average transaction value of people who are selling particular services like workshops or keynotes or whatever those happen to be. So when we look at the plans that most people are creating, they're creating plans that are not based on any kind of metrics that are real. So, often I'll see people who'll say to me, Jess, I've set a goal. I want to make £500,000 next year. And I'll go, oh my gosh, that's great. Wonderful. How inspiring. What did you make this year? And they'll say, well, this year I only made £10,000, but that's okay because next year I've got a really good money mindset around it. Now, I'm not going to diminish the value of mindset. I believe strongly in things like resilience, grit, being open to spotting opportunities, and actually a lot of things that are similar to money mindset. But you know what I don't believe in is increasing your sales goal by like 1,000% without any kind of data to show that that has the capacity to happen, or that you have the capacity to execute a plan that would lead you to doing that. So I think it's important when we start looking at these things, because again, when we're at this time of year and we're thinking about planning, we typically can tend to fall into our comfort zone around, oh, well, it's fine. If I want to make more money, I'll just put out more content. And we all know that in the B2B space, that doesn't work. I don't care who's saying it does. I like a lot of people in the online space personally, but I also know what works when it comes to making corporate sales. And content and posting more of it will not mean that you have a higher value year than if you didn't, because your sales activity is the bit that needs to be controlled and the bit that needs to be done. So when we are laughing about how I'm such a big numbers nerd, we have to also consider the reality that for any plan, you need to know what numbers you're working with, what metrics you're working with. And that's where people can go a little bit awry. So what we need to be thinking about is the pretty plans that we're creating. Are they based, or we have created in previous years, are they based on standardized metrics around sales, or are they based around your own numbers, or are they just based around what you think you might be able to do when you're super motivated and in planning mode. Because that's where your plans can end up being really overwhelming and really hard and mean that after about month 2 of the year, you just ignore your plan entirely. And that really stings, because when you spent a couple of days figuring out what your plan is and then you just ditch it by the roadside, that is going to hurt. And it also means that your business ends up being really reactive, which usually the reason people create a plan is that they don't have to be reactive. They want to be proactive and, feel like their business is streamlined, like they're in control of their sales, like they can actually create the revenue that they want to create and the results that they want to create. They don't want to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm here again. How did this happen? Last year I did exactly the same. Perhaps I'm incapable of creating and sticking to a plan. No, you just created the wrong plan and then you didn't stick to it because it felt overwhelming, hard, and didn't produce the result you wanted it to, right? And then the third thing I always notice about planning, and this is with myself, by the way, and with everybody who has ever attended a planning retreat with me, it's this accountability to the plan, right? It's all very well and good planning on your own. I do a lot of planning by myself, obviously, also not surprise you to learn. I've got no mates. Oh God, I should stop saying that, but it is sort of true. I don't know whether anyone else feels this. Complete segue, by the way, but like you start working for yourself and you end up with like 4 friends. That's me. Like, and some of those friends don't have businesses. But no, in all seriousness, I do have friends, and actually it's having that external accountability that really helps me to stick to a plan. So when we plan on our own, the real risk is that we create an overwhelming and difficult plan that we're not able to execute because of all the reasons that we've already mentioned. But the other problem with it is that you have no accountability afterwards. So nobody keeps you accountable after your plan's been created, but you fall off the wagon because, let's face it, some points of the year you get tired, you can't be bothered, these things happen. But if you don't have any accountability to get back on track, guess what you don't do? Get back on track. You also don't have any wisdom and expertise during that planning phase with people who are saying, this is what I did last year. I did that part of the plan last year, and this is how it worked or didn't work. Or, I absolutely tried working with those stakeholders in similar spaces, but this is what I found. And so this is what you might want to change as a result. Having that accountability both in the room when you're creating your plan and afterwards is such a huge thing. And I know I'm going to say this on the podcast, and then I'm going to get a bunch of people who are also selling end of year planning retreats being like, oh my God, you should all do this because you should get accountability from friends and things like that. And it is true. It is really true. So I think one of the things that you do have to think about if you are planning yourself for 2025 is, what is it that you actually want to create, and who is it that is going to help you stay accountable to achieving those goals and staying on track and continuing to implement in the very best way. Now, the other thing that you might have heard this year as we start thinking about 2025 planning is my own planning for 2025. And if you are on our email list, you will have heard and seen signs that the C-suite is changing in 2025. We are about to announce, we're on the precipice over the next couple of weeks of announcing how the C-suite is going to look in 2025. We're going to be involving more accountability. We will be doing some exciting things that are designed to move people along even quicker than our current success rate allows. And we'll actually be doing something that I think it's really actually quite scary for me to talk about. We're going to be welcoming a limited number of participants. Ooh. Now it's out there, it's in the world. You can all share in my moment of like, oh, am I going to do this? Am I really? And now I've said it, so it's going to happen. So the C-suite is going to be changing in 2025. And that is not because I hate the C-suite. I love it. It's my best ever creation. But there are things that I've noticed about learning styles in 2024, specifically towards the end of this year, that are changing. And I want to embrace those things for 2025 and create and cultivate even better experiences for our participants, who, by the way, still already have over a 90% success rate of generating their entire ROI back within 6 months. So, we have the highest, I would imagine, and I can't say for legal reasons because I haven't gone and surveyed everybody else's programs and their implementation rates or success rates, mainly because they don't publish them. Otherwise, we know the numbers now that I probably would. But we have an extremely high implementation rate during the C-suite, and we have an extremely high success rate. It's something that I don't see across the industry and would describe as unparalleled. But we want to make that even better. And so in 2025, the C-suite will indeed be changing. If you are interested in some of those changes, it is best to drop me an email. We'll put you on the super early list of people who will be finding out more. Like I say, there's going to be more accountability. There will be some exciting new things coming to it. If you are already in the C-suite and listening to this episode, don't worry, you're going to hear about those changes anyway, so don't panic. But we will be looking at limited numbers for next year. So if you've been thinking about the C-suite and thinking I should jump in, what I will say is that this is going to be one of the final times you will be able to and benefit from the changes completely free of charge as we head into 2025. So it's worth having a little think about. Right. I am off for the day. If you are doing your end of year planning, please let me know how you get on. And if you do want all the sneaky preview deeds about the C-suite and the changes we'll be making, please do hit me up. I'll see you soon.